Space Arena.
Ground Arena.
SAGA Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Space Arena, Ground Arena, a podcast about the Star Wars trading card game coming out, Star Wars Unlimited, where we cover it from the ground into space. And that was terrible. I butchered that. Thanks for joining us tonight. We have the whole crew together tonight. Me and Dan left Mr. Ben out to hang last week, but we're all back together. So, Ben, how are you doing tonight?
Great. I hope the rest of the show goes as well as that introduction did.
Yeah, I just fumbled all over all my words there. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm doing swell. I'm excited to be here to talk about today's topics. Should be exciting.
Before we dive in, real quick, Dan, what have you been playing these last couple weeks? Tabletop,
The new
video games,
tabletop
whatever.
wise, two things. So we started a new Imperial Assault campaign with one of my work buddies, and we knew this was going to happen, but he had his first kid last week, and we were 3 missions into our 10-mission Star Wars Imperial Assault campaign. So now it's going to be a while before we get to continue, but he texts me every day about how sad he is. I think it'll be less than that, because the entire group other than him already had kids, so we'll understand if there's chaos going around. We've agreed to travel to him, but we want to give them time first, so we're waiting patiently if we can. So congrats to him, that's super exciting. And sorry for the Rebel team, they're going to have to wait for a while. And the new One Piece trading card game set came out, so we've been playing OP04 for that game, and it's been a blast. It's ripped open the meta once again, so that's cool.
I'm sure he's a big fan of our show, so he'll hear your apology.
I'm sure. Totally. He'll watch it in like 6 years and be like, "You talked about me? How dare you?"
Mr. Ben, what have you been up to game-wise?
So I'm going to come at this in what may be a controversial way. So, I'm a huge Cowboy Bebop fan, right? And when the live-action Cowboy Bebop came out, everybody hated it. I did not hate it. I enjoyed the live-action Cowboy Bebop. Was it as good as the animated one? No, the anime was definitely better. And I say all of this as a preamble to just this week, my wife and I started watching the live-action One Piece. Now, I haven't really paid attention to any hype around this because I never watched the anime, but I have to assume that everybody hates the live-action because that's like what people do. But I really like it, and I like it to the point where I kind of actually want to play the card game now of more than just sort of the curiosity of I tend to like learning new card games. That's fun for me. But now I actually want to play with these characters. And I don't know, it's really doing it for me. As far as games I've actually been playing, I've been playing DC Dual Force, trying to climb that ladder. But I say that every week for the last few weeks. But this One Piece card game, I think I'm going to have to pick up some starters and check it out on the back of, hopefully this isn't that controversial, the live action show.
Well, you just made my day.
What have you been doing? Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because I actually also really liked the Cowboy Bebop live action. Agree it wasn't as good as the anime. And you'd be shocked to know you're not actually in the minority. So far, the live action One Piece, people are saying the curse is over, and it's critically acclaimed, it's fan acclaimed. So far,
cool.
99% of people like it seems like. So perfect time. Anyway, I want to hear what Josh has been playing.
Just real quick on the One Piece. The anime for me was really hard to watch. So
yeah,
it gets
better
good.
than the anime. So it's not better than the manga, but that's okay.
The anime, some shows I can watch the first time and just go right through. Some shows are hard to get into. One Piece gets good after 200 episodes, right? So it's yeah, exactly. So use the live action to get in, right? I think the live action is the perfect jumping on point for people.
So I went into it not with less than no preconceived notion, because I had some preconceived notions, but they were totally wrong. just based on the like memes I've seen and like the pictures on the card games, I had it in my head that it was like a Samurai Champloo type show, so that it was going to be set in like the Edo era of like feudal Japan, and that One Piece was some kind of like martial arts technique. So I was way off. And when it's like, oh, this is a thing about pirates, I'm like, okay, yeah, let's go. Anyway, I'll stop talking about One Piece now.
Look for our new One Piece podcast between Mr. Ben and Dan coming shortly.
No, I can't sign up for more of that.
I haven't been doing much tabletop gaming other than like playing like Magic Spell Slingers with like Caleb Grace on my phone, shout out, and some DC Dual Force when I get a chance. But yeah, I've been getting in. The new Necrom chapter for Elder Scrolls Online came out a couple months ago, so I finally made a character in the new class. I've been playing through that in the new story chapter and everything, so that's been fun. But that's been it for me. So I think we'll jump into going over some of the cards we've recently been previewed. You got that queued up, Ben, I'm guessing.
It should be loading now. Okay, so we'll start with Ezra Bridger. This is a 3-cost ground unit, cunning, heroism affiliation, 3/4. When this unit completes an attack, look at the top card of your deck. You may play it, discard it, or leave it on top of your deck. I'll throw this to Dan. What do you think?
I like it. Getting information never hurts, right? You might play it, you might get to look for a better card, or you might say, okay, that's a great card for me to resource next turn, so let's leave it there. I do think that the triggering phrase when this unit completes an attack is an extremely long way to say like after an attack if this unit survives. But I'm a big fan. Not my favorite art so far, but it seems reasonable. I always like looking at the top of my deck. What are your thoughts?
If you are familiar at all with the Ezra Bridger artwork from Star Wars Destiny, this is leaps and bounds ahead of what we got from Star Wars Destiny.
This is true.
Like Ezra Bridger art in Star Wars Destiny, he had 2 cards I can think of, and there was a third one because there was an event running interference or something that he was on, or support. They were all very bad. So this actually looks like Ezra and is respectable. So I'm actually a little disappointed that it's actually good as far as Ezra art goes. But for the card itself, I'm very excited that we're seeing more of these Spectre cards. Mr. Ben showed a few last week with Sabine and Kanan. So getting the Spectre squad together is very cool. Interesting to note, Sabine and Ezra also have the Rebel traits on them. So the Light Fleet Lieutenant, that when it's played, you can attack with a unit for plus attack, triggers them. So something to keep an eye on. But I think he's a fair 3-costed unit. Hopefully there's some way, an event or a leader, some way we can get the Spectres together without having to pay the extra aspect penalties for them, because you'd want to play Sabine and Ezra and Kanan and all them together. They're all different color aspects, so hopefully there's a way you can play them together without being penalized for it.
So I think I would have much preferred to see card text that said something like, when this unit enters play, look at the top card of your deck and do all this different stuff with it. Because with him completing attack, I think realistically we're looking at this power triggering probably once most of the time. His stats are defensively tilted, but they're not like big, huge, hard to deal with stats, especially for 3 costs. So you're getting a fair body, but you can't realistically expect him to stick around for 2-3 turns to be able to use this effect more than once. So I think you're probably going to play this. You're probably going to play him in a deck, or let me rephrase that. I think if you're going to play this, you're probably going to play him in a deck that's looking for Force, Rebel, or Spectre synergy, and this is maybe like a backup 3-drop to smooth out your curve a little bit. There are going to be some times where you play this guy and he just gets wiped off the board by some kind of a from-hand removal action, and you don't even get to do his thing at all. So upside, I quite like him. Downside, he could just be a fair body for 3 cost, and that's not like the end of the world, but is it good enough for constructed? That I'm not sure. So this may be like a sealed draft type card where we see him more than anywhere else, outside of the Spectre deck, of course. I guess unless somebody has further comments on Ezra, we'll move on to the 3 cost command space unit Consortium Star Viper. This is a 3 cost 3/3. While you have the initiative, this unit gains Restore 2. So when he attacks, you'll be able to heal something for 2. So conditional healing. Throw this to Banana. What do you think?
I think it's okay. It's fair. I'll say it's fair. I don't think it's the greatest card. I like the design space of playing with. If you have the initiative, you can get this bonus. I think this one's way better than the aggression one we saw. That like when it attacks, it lets you draw a card because it only has 1 health. So having 3 health on this one, I like better. I think Restore is relevant, but I think it's just fair. I don't think it's great, but I don't think it's terrible.
I do like what you said. I like this idea of giving incentive for having the initiative, because in Star Wars Destiny there was that battlefield, and claiming it like had this big impactful moment. Here, getting the initiative basically means you're going to go first next round, which is powerful. Don't get me wrong. Going first and attacking and getting to make the first decision is good, but by claiming it, you're giving your opponent like time to like do a bunch of things while you just sit there and watch them build their board state and optimize it, knowing that you're not going to do anything else. So having a lot of units in your deck that gain bonuses when you claim the initiative could be a cool deck archetype where you're planning to just, play your curve unit, attack with it, and claim initiative every turn. That way you're always getting like a slightly pumped up unit. I like it. I think it's a cool way to encourage players to really take that initiative when they need to. What do you think, Ben?
It seems like Command has sort of a sub-theme within the faction of conditional effects. So there's things that maybe it doesn't have super clean access to, and this is just another example of if you jump through this hoop, you get this carrot. It's fine. Probably this is going to look a lot cooler. Probably this is going to see play in draft as a 3 cost space unit for fair stats. Is this good enough to make the cut and constructed? I'm not convinced that it is. Maybe. It's again, like Banana said, it's totally fair, but it's hard to get excited about a card that is like completely balanced. It's fair.
The other thing is, I think it depends how much initiative matters too, right? And if what you have to give up and the plan around that, right? What are you giving up to claim the initiative to be able to have this Restore 2, right? So I don't like if you don't have anything else to do and like your deck's that fast, then it's probably fine, right? But if you're trying to be a deck that wants to take a lot of actions each turn so that you can like have like a strong second half of the game, right? Because you're just overwhelming your opponent with all these actions, then right, you're not going to use this card. But I think you said this is probably like a draft and sealed like all-star. I could definitely see that, but
I do think you said it's hard to be excited about a fair balanced unit, but if someone can make a fair balanced card game, I am super excited. And some of the downfalls of previous card games are when the meta becomes these not even like named characters, right? But no one wants to play in the Star Wars Destiny meta that's like ruled by Jedha partisans. That wasn't fun when Destiny was doing that. And LCG had a similar time where it was just generic nameless smuggler in the background. Something Freeholder was like the strongest character. You want to see your classic Star Wars iconic characters. So having those characters have the cool unique effects and then the sort of generic things that card games need to have on the generic units, I think is good design. So I'm happy with that at least.
All right, so our last card for today is a Vigilance affiliated 1 cost upgrade. It gives the equipped unit +0, +3. Resilient. I suppose I should say the name of the card. The card is called Resilient, +0, +3. What do you think, Kennedy?
I think it's good, right? I mean, this is a great way to keep something like an Ezra around if you want to trigger their ability multiple times. I don't think 3 health is anything to sneeze at for 1 cost. Um, does this make playing an off curve unit and then spending the extra 1 resource on 3 health worth it? Maybe, right? Luke can put out a shield which prevents all damage, but how often is that damage going to be more than 3? I don't know. Upgrades in general scare me a little bit because they're not sticky, right? You play a bunch of upgrades on a unit, if that unit gets blown away by hand removal or something, then you're real sad that you put things on it. So I'm not like, it's another one that seems fair and balanced, so it's hard to be super excited about it, but at the same time I think it's reasonable enough. What do you think, Josh?
I think it's all right. Some of these are really hard for me to gauge without like playing them, like doing this off the hip card analysis sometimes is hard, and this is one of the cards for me that's hard to evaluate because for 3 health for 1 cost seems a little above right curve, but I also don't know if this is worth taking up a slot in my deck unless I'm building for something specific, right? Like, so great Krennic decks where you want to have damaged dudes but you want them to stick around, like I could see this maybe seeing play there, but this is one that I need to see more before I say, yeah, this is good or not. But there's another card that I think FFG seems to do a really good job of is these commons and uncommons that seem super fair, and I think we'll see lots of play in sealed and draft. So I think they're nailing it on that department, right? Like none of these cards are bad in sealed and draft, really, right? So I think good on them for that. But this was one I need to play with more personally to kind of evaluate.
So if this was a plot twist, like a combat trick, you declare an attack on me and I go, oh, I get to play 1 and respond to your attack and surprise you by increasing my guy's stats, I would say 1 cost for 3 feels pretty good. Like that's a swing across a lot of different games. A swing of 3 maybe gets you up the curve, protects you from a buffed attack. But that's not what this is, and that's not how this game works. This game doesn't let me throw this out as a surprise combat trick. So this functions the same as sending up a flare, saying, hey, this is the guy that I'm investing my resources into. This is the guy that I'm trying to keep alive. And your opponent gets to determine if they have the ability or the desire to deploy their resources to deal with this. So maybe I'm not properly evaluating the action economy, not coming from other games where, I mean, I played a few games, but I haven't seriously played games where the action economy is such a key part like it is here. So I'm maybe looking at this with the inability to play this in real time, to play this in response to an attack, and looking down on it a little more harshly than I should based on the fact that it's in this game and not a game that has those instant type spells. But I think if I'm going to put this into a constructed deck, I'm going to be putting it in there because there's some other reason that I want upgrades. There's my leader gets to flip when I play X number of upgrades, or there's another unit that gets a buff. So there has to be some kind of cross synergy. By itself, I don't think this is going to make the cut in constructed. It's at best curve filler in sealed or draft, and I'm not even convinced it makes the cut there.
How do you think it compares to repair? So that's a 1 cost event in the same aspect that's just heal 3 damage from a unit or base.
So in it with regard to how it interacts with units, it's strictly better because it can get them up above their like maximum health level. This can go on top of it. You don't have to have damage on the unit before you can heal it. But the ability to also choose to heal your face, you can't equip this to your base at all.
Yeah.
So I think if I have to choose between those two, I'm going to choose the one that I can either fix up a unit or heal my base. Again, unless there's something that's giving me upgrade synergy. And then in that case, I'm taking it because it's a cheap upgrade.
Yeah, I think upgrade synergy units with grit, like rugged survivors, this could be good with. Anything that like wants to take damage, like you said with Krennic earlier. But for the most part, I think that this is a curve smoother or waiting to see more cards to see if it fits into a deck. Cool card. Missed the flavor text, though. Come on. Big empty text box. That makes me sad.
Yeah, that looks weird,
Looks
doesn't
real
it?
gross, right?
In that case, why not just have full art, right?
Yeah, right.
So there is one more card that they did show yesterday
Oh.
on the stream. And I have it up, so I'll throw it up here. So this was a card they showed yesterday on the FFG live stream, and they were talking about the product launches and stuff. So this is a 4-cost event, takedown. It's a tactic. Defeat a unit with 5 or less remaining HP. So it's not limited to like non-leader units, so you can hit leaders with this. What are your thoughts?
We'll let Ben go first.
Vigilance appears to be a faction that is going to come up with every version of removing units that doesn't involve just dealing straight damage to them. And this is yet another example of Vigilance sort of roundabout access to removal. So you're paying 4 and you're going to... I think probably the reason this isn't just strictly a good early-ish game removal is because so many of the stats on so many of the units are heavily defensively slanted, and that tends to be true across most of the factions. So for this to hit something meaningful, for it to hit something that's worth 4 cost, you're probably going to have to crash something into it or put some damage on it first. So this isn't, I don't think, going to end up being the cleanest removal for high-value targets. And what does it cost? 3 more for the non-conditional just kill a thing card that's in the same faction. I mean, I guess it may be meta dependent. If the meta is rotten with really important, impactful units that have printed 5 or less, then maybe it sees some play. But I have to know what the targets in the environment are going to look like before I know if I'm going to choose this over the unconditional one that just costs a little more.
Yeah.
Right.
So
What do you think?
The unconditional one does cost 1 more. It's called Vanquish, but it can't target leader units. So I think where takedown scares me is if I'm playing a leader unit that has 5 health, like Sabine, I'm really scared flipping against a blue deck unless I know what's in their hand, or I know that even if they take out my Sabine, I have gotten such big board advantage by getting that removal out of their hand that it's worth it. So I think that leaders we've seen like Luke and Vader that have, big beefy butts, that's totally fine. But Sabine would be worried about a Vigilance player knocking her out as soon as she gets her tempo flip. To be seen, right? But that's my gut reaction is that it's cool because it can target leaders. Things that can target leaders seem good.
Yep. I agree. I think the flexibility of being able to target a leader is what makes it very interesting. Yeah. I think if you're playing Sabine, right, you dirtle. You flip after they spend a resource.
Yeah, or after they claim, right? Just wait till the end. Get at least one activation out.
Yeah. All right, and then
it's got to be a meta where the Vigilance players that think like either Sabine is going to have to be like OP, or there's going to have to be other juicy targets in the meta as well.
That's true.
And if there's enough of those kinds of targets showing up, then that may push people off of those kinds of leaders, at which point this goes back to being like maybe like, and that's sort of the fun like cycle of trying to read metas in card games.
Yeah. I like the card in general. I like some sort of removal from hand in each faction. We've seen different versions in a couple of the factions already, so I'm happy with that. I do think that this will see enough play just because it can hit leaders and it can help finish them off. But it's to be seen what the meta looks like, right? The interesting thing that I found, or that our groups talked about with leaders, is, and TCGs are always like this, right? Knowing the card pool is really important. If you showed up to a Lorcana event right now, having never played before, you'd be like reading every card your opponent plays and being shocked as they remove your characters from the board or whatever. But in a game of Unlimited, as soon as you sit down and your opponent sets up their board, you know one of their units. If you know the card pool well enough, you know what's on the other side of their leader card. So if I'm sitting against someone that I know has a juicy target for that card, it's really easy to not resource it and keep it for that opportune time. So that's where I think it'll be really good, is when you know the card pool really well and you say, oh, there's that bomb unit that has 5 health, or maybe it has 6 health, so I'm going to save something to crash into it and then, or something to damage it from hand so I can finish it with this. I guess we'll see. I'm excited for a year from now or whatever.
Anything else on Takedown or the other cards we've seen?
No, let's move on to the cheery topic.
All right, so I think we'll start off with the stream from last week. The what's inside a booster box or pack or whatever it was. So I'll just quick go over the unlimited breakdown for each pack, and then we can talk about it. So a pack is 16 cards, right? It has 9 commons, 3 uncommons. There's a rare slot that can be a rare or legendary. There's a leader slot that can be of any rarity. There's a base slot which is common, and the backside of the bases is the tokens, and then there's a foil slot, and that can be any rarity. So those are the contents of an individual booster pack. So I'll kick this to Ben first. What are your thoughts on the pack breakdown itself?
So I'm very much a cards are game pieces type player, like primarily. I mean, I have opinions on some of the other areas of interest involving TCGs, but my main thing is I like playing games. So when FFG was like, there's going to be an accessible, easy to get version of every card, I thought, great. And what we found out is that there's the hyperspace and the showcase. There's a couple different types of variants, and those variants can show up in any of the slots. And the upside is you can have a rare in your rare slot and then have a rare variant in your common slot. So every slot in the pack is exciting. All of this is true, but I'm not primarily a collector. So all that to me is just like noise. And at the bottom line is, okay, there's going to be cards that are going to cost me more money to build the decks that I want to build, which I suppose I probably should have expected from the very beginning, that it wasn't actually just going to be alternate art chase cards, that there was actually going to be different kinds. But it does feel like they maybe, for as positive as I have been about the way FFG has handled a lot of this, I kind of wish they would have been a little more upfront about the actual rarity scheme way back when, and not let so many of us sort of labor under the illusion that like all of our game pieces are going to be commons and the rare cards are just going to be different looking game pieces, because it doesn't appear like that's actually how it's going to shake out. So I'm not thrilled about the rarity distribution from the perspective of a game player. For the people who really like chasing alternate versions of cards and unique artworks, it sounds like they did a very good job catering to that crowd.
What are your thoughts?
Fair assessment. If you asked me 5 years ago, I was sort of out of TCGs and I wasn't playing a lot of them. I was playing a lot more LCGs, maybe a little bit of Destiny, I guess, if that was a TCG, and whenever that was out. I think it was about 5 years ago at some point. But I was big on non-collectible card games because, like Ben, I like to have my game pieces and I don't like to have to search for them or hunt for them. And yes, the internet exists and I can just go to tcgplayer.com. We are not taking commission, but you can go there and buy any single for any game you want, even dead games from 30 years ago. And that's cool. But cards get expensive. And I wouldn't say that like you should have expected that, Ben. You shouldn't beat yourself up on that, because literally from the first live stream FFG had, they said that the only hard rare cards to get are going to be, you know, those ones that are alternate arts. They said it's going to be really accessible to get play sets of the cards that you want to play with. And this is completely at odds with those statements, which is a little upsetting, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm still going to play Unlimited. I'm still going to buy a bunch of it, probably more than I should. And I'm going to enjoy the heck out of it. But this makes me worried about what they're benchmarking against, right? I'm now like heavily into too many TCGs is what I would say, too many to admit about. But almost every modern TCG I play has at least 2 rare slots per pack. And because of that, prices are pretty reasonable, right? And games that have decided not to do that or to have like super hard to find rarities have found that it's really predatory and hard to grow a player base. So when we hear that they've been developing this game for a long time and they've done a lot of research and they've done all sorts of things, and then one of the most important things to figure out, right? The distribution of cards in a pack to make sure everybody can play the game they want to play is kind of like wacko. It makes me super nervous. And I mean, it's going to be great for the people on Whatnot that like to open packs one card at a time and get everybody excited and sell them for a lot of money. That it will be very good for them. It will not be good and healthy for the kitchen table players or the competitive local players that want to get a playset of a certain color or something like that, right? If there's 24 packs in a box and you're getting one rare minimum per pack, you could get a box where you only get 24 rares. Now, there's probably going to be a couple in the foil slots, and maybe you'll get a hyperspace card or two. So maybe you got 30 rares. But if you're playing a deck that has like max copies of like 5 or 6 rares in it, it's going to force you to either buy multiple boxes, which I mean is expected in a TCG, or buy singles or trade really heavily. But it also doesn't even make trading easy, right? I've seen, I'm going to call them excuses, and maybe that's too harsh of a term, but I've seen a lot of people excuse this one rare per pack plan with things like, oh, it'll make trading more fun. It will make trading more fun. It'll make it like essential, but it'll also make it a lot harder, right? Because people are going to not have cards that they want to trade, right? There's just less of the rare cards out there. It makes trading harder. It'll increase the value of your cards, which is cool because then you can spend more money on them, right? These are my hot takes on these sorts of excuses. I had someone tell me that it'll be fine because you could just build a deck out of commons and uncommons. And yeah, you could, and probably lose to decks that have rares and legendaries, right? So these are excuses in my opinion. And maybe I shouldn't say it so harshly, but like I think that this is a bad distribution. It might be great for sealed play. It might be great for draft. It might be great for pre-releases, but it's like bad for players' wallets. And it's probably bad for like growing a game community, right? I've seen several people in our little like TCG chat for the local people that saw that and they were like, "Ew, maybe I don't want that card game." And I'm like, "No, it looks really cool. I think you do." But I don't want to have to convince people. I want to be like, "Yeah, remember all those other TCGs that have reasonable prices?" It's not because they're unpopular. It's because the distribution model has been kind of figured out. So I did a little bit of research, and the numbers change every day. So I apologize that these are slightly out of date. But 3 days ago, when we started talking about this episode, I went on TCG Player and looked up the most expensive card from all 4 sets of One Piece, the most expensive gameplay unique card. So from the first set that came out over a year ago, the most expensive card was $11 at the time. The alternate art of that card was worth like $300. So the model that FFG talked about, where the alternate arts were going to be the things you chase after and like spend money on, but the common things would be easy to find, that was kind of solved in that game. And when I go through all like 4 sets, I think it was like 11, 20, 40, because some card just won a big tournament. And then the newest set, the most expensive gameplay unique card, was like $11 again. It's like right at the sweet spot where it's slightly more than the cost of a pack, but low enough that it encourages people to go buy packs instead of just buying singles. And I'm worried that we're not going to get that sort of costing in Star Wars Unlimited. But I'll still buy a bunch and trade for whatever colors I don't play. So hit me up on Discord. Anyway, that was my negative stance on this. Sorry.
No, that's fine. We need to be honest, right? It's not all sunshines and rainbows out here. So we can't just act like everything's perfect when it's not, right? We have to be honest and truthful with our assessment. So, but before I give my 2 cents, I'm just curious, what is the pack distribution breakdown in One Piece for their boosters? Like how many cards, how many rare slots?
I know that there's 2 rare cards, and there's 2 rare or higher cards, right? And every rare card, a rare or higher card, is a foil. So there's no foil slot because every card that's rare, super rare, is a foil card. Mm-hmm. Alt arts can also come in those slots, so that's pretty exciting. I've opened enough packs you would think that I would know, but I don't. But it's something like 5 or 6 commons, 3 to 4 uncommons, and then the 2 rare slots. So it's sort of doubling how many rares are in the card pool, which I think is really important for making the rares affordable. I know that this isn't what you asked about One Piece, but in Lorcana, It's 6 commons, 1 of each color, which is really nice for collection building and sealed and draft because you're guaranteed 1 of like whatever color you're trying to get. And then so many uncommons, and again, there they have 2 rare slots and a foil slot. So it's sort of double the number of rares and a foil that could be a rare. So you can get some packs where you have 3 of the highest rarity card in a pack, which happens more frequently than you would expect. But that could be because they're really bad at randomizing too. Also a problem that could happen, but we don't know about yet. So I'm going to look up your One Piece question because now I'm embarrassed.
Well, I'm just curious because like I was comparing it, right? So since the game started, I've brought up Final Fantasy TCG, right? Like all the time, because I think they have a good model for how things. It's the same thing as you said with One Piece. Like the cards, the normal art cards aren't very expensive. You can find them, and then the alt arts are the ones that are really expensive. And you can get like a full play set of a Final Fantasy TCG set in like 3 or 4 boxes of all rarities, right? And I think we figured out, we'll get into this a little bit, but we figured out that is nowhere near the case for Star Wars Unlimited. So the pack breakdown didn't really bother me until we got the stream yesterday. And now it bothers me more, knowing if you need a full playset of legendaries, how many boxes you're going to need to buy to get those if you wanted to get a whole playset just through buying boxes. I think the breakdown itself, like, I don't know. Like, I was fine with the initial breakdown of the 16 cards, and then really, what really made me second guess that and has me a little worried now is more based on the stream that we had yesterday. For some reason, the stream yesterday has me like a little nervous. But like the initially, like the pack breakdown, I was like, oh, that's fine because like Final Fantasy TCG is like 12 cards, right? There's 7 commons, 3. They call them rares. They're basically the uncommons, right? So 3 uncommons, and then there's 1 rare or higher, and then a foil slot. So there's 12 cards, and it's basically the same breakdown, just 12 cards instead of 16. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. Now I'm nervous after the stream yesterday, which might not make sense, but for some reason, that's what them together.
So I think it's worth pointing out again that their idea of trying to make the way it was described, like, oh, we didn't want people to just shuffle through the pack until they got to the rare slot, and that's the only card they care about. So the idea of having a common card that could be promoted to like a rare hyperspace version, and your uncommon card could be promoted to a showcase version, plus you've got your rare slot. So you could have these packs where there's like all these pops of rarity. The reason it falls flat for me as a cards or game pieces guy is because 2 of those examples of like, oh, I got a rare thing is just a cosmetic treatment, which I don't care about anyway. So I actually only have the 1 chance to get a mechanically unique rare card in the pack. Now, it is true that these commons and uncommons that are going to have these cool unique treatments are probably going to command more like value, so I can use those to get the mechanically unique game pieces that I want. But I mean, I think it falls as flat as it does because of the way FFG led me to believe that the commons were going to be all of the mechanically unique cards, and the only like chase stuff was going to be the cosmetic stuff, and that's just not the case. That, like, I don't know if they changed their mind. I don't know if it's a case of like loose wording. I might have to go back and listen to what they said again to make sure that this wasn't me reading into it. Like, I'm trying to give them the benefit of every potential doubt here, but I feel like for the first time in this whole game thing that I feel like maybe they misled me a little bit, and that doesn't fill me with a ton of confidence.
You're going through all the emotions of Star Wars Destiny right away.
Yeah.
I may have missed something in the stream, but when they have a showcase or like a hyperspace card, does that upgrade? Like if that was in a common card slot, could that be a rare rarity card that also has this frame, or does it just upgrade the common to a common with no frame, or how does that work?
My understanding was the hyperspace, it shows up with the rarity that Banana put on the screen there, but it could hit any of the slots. So if it hits the common slot, you get a hyperspace version of a common card.
Bomber.
If it hits the rare slot, then you would get a showcase version of a rare card. Now, again, I could have misunderstood that.
Yeah.
I watched the stream twice, and that's the understanding I came away with. But again, caveat: I'm not an authority on it.
Yeah, so I shared the breakdowns of the alternate or whatever. So foil cards, you get one per pack. We know that already. Legendary, the pull rate is 1 in 8 packs, so you get 3 per box because there's 24 packs in a box. So you get 3 per box. So if you want a full playset of legendaries, you need to buy as many boxes as there are legendary cards in the set to get a playset of legendaries, if that makes sense, right? So if there's 16 legendary cards in set 1, you would need to buy 16 boxes to, buy yourself a full a playset, right?
I guess you get a showcase card then. Cool.
Yeah.
Like,
The,
gross.
the
Sorry.
hyperspace variant. I mean, that's if you're not buying singles, right? If you're like, I want to get a full playset from buying my own boxes, you need to buy a box for each legendary card to have a full playset. Hyperspace.
I mean, for the people who engage with these games and the thing they like is cracking packs and getting excited about tearing the wrapper off the cards and seeing what's in the pack, there's a lot to love here for that sub demographic of the TCG community. And like, I'm happy for those people, like for the collector guys who are really, there's a lot of different cool things to be excited about in these packs. For the people who want to buy cards and throw them into a binder and then thumb through that binder and talk about how cool it is that they have that binder. For game piece people, I'm feeling a little rough.
Yeah, I'm going to trade all these alternate art versions to try to get the stuff I need to build the decks I want. Hyperspace variant cards are, you'll get 2 in every 3 packs. The hyperspace rare/legendary cards will be 1 in 15 packs. And then the foil hyperspace, right? So we have the hyperspace, which is that like jump to light speed kind of border around the card. The foiled version of those is 1 in 50 packs. And then the showcase cards are 1 in every other case, 1 in 12 boxes. So a case is 6 boxes. So you buy 2 cases, you can get a showcase card. These have to be leaders, right? There's no way that a showcase card is going to be like...
I want to showcase Admiral Akbar. That's all I know. I want it.
So
They will go in my deck.
again, my understanding is that hyperspace is just the fancy name for full art, and showcase is full and alternate art.
So the hyperspace cards, it changes how it changes the border. Here, I will share a different image here in a second.
I mean, you can see it right there with the legendary versus the hyperspace legendary right underneath it. So it basically takes the art and makes it full art. And you're right, it does put like some lines on the sides too, which is fine.
So there you can see like it changes the border, right? So it does kind of make it full art, but it changes the border to make it look like, the Star Wars jump to light speed.
You're
thing.
going through hyperspace, right?
Yeah.
Punch it, Chewie. I mean, the number I really want to see is I get 24 packs in a box, and each one's got a foil slot. How many of those are rares or higher, right? And they might not want to give us that number, but if every other pack has 2 rares because the foils are seeded really heavily with rares, then that would help a lot. But I have a feeling, based on the other numbers we've seen, that's probably not the case. They showed us the foil legendary hyperspace level, so I guess in every 2 boxes you buy plus 2 packs, you're going to get 1 extra legendary, so that's good. I guess. Hopefully the legendaries are really bad cards. They haven't been from the ones we've seen so far, so I'm not convinced that'll be the case. But I'm excited to play still. So it hasn't ruined my excitement for the game, but it has ruined my excitement for drafting and not drafting, but like building my collection for sealed product. I would never do that fully, but like I
Yeah.
tend to buy a box or two and like try to build from it on that first weekend, and we all try to do that, and it's gonna feel like, I don't know, pauper.
I was definitely hoping that I could pick up a case at the release, and then through just playing draft and sealed at the shop or with my friends, that I would be able to flesh out a complete enough collection that I would feel like I had all the toys. And I'm not confident that that's going to be the case. I think I'm going to have to like pick the colors, the factions that I want to focus on, and then just pick a couple that I'm going to just trade everything off and trade off the art stuff to hopefully be able to get it all.
That's not a bad strategy. That's what I do with One Piece and Lorcana, is I only collect and keep two colors. And yeah, it sucks if the new meta comes out and those colors are on the bottom, but that's fine. I'm really good at playing those two colors. And as soon as I open my box, I'm like, hey, here's 2/3 of it that anybody can trade me the two colors I like to get rid of these cards, so I don't have to sell them online or whatever. And it works really well for building a collection from like a smaller purchase. It gives you less deck building options. I wasn't intending to do that in this game, so we'll see what happens when it comes out. But I do feel like I'll be having to buy a lot of singles for the legendary slot for sure. Rares, maybe not so much. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be the legendaries, right? I think it's gonna be but
not to try to be Mr. Positive here, because this isn't super positive in my opinion, but we don't know how many legendaries and rares there are per color, right? There could be one legendary per color. That's still pretty abysmal, because you have to buy 6 boxes to have a full play set of legendaries or enough trade bait for that. But like, I feel like the chances of there being one legendary per color are really low. And there could be like 4 rares per color, and then we don't care that there's so few rares. But again, we haven't seen anything that's going to tell us that. So I don't want to assume that that's what it's going to be, because I don't know any card games that operate that way, where there's like only one of like the super hardest rarity. Some Bandai games do that with like the super secret rares, but those are usually not even the power cards. So I don't know.
Like Argent Saga did that in its first expansion, but then they changed their rarities for every expansion after that.
Maybe that'll happen here too.
I guess one thing I'm curious about is like the hyperspace rare / legendary. Can that only show up in the rare slot? Or could that hyperspace rare / legendary show up in any of the other like common, uncommon
Did you play
slots?
Destiny, like the first person shooter Destiny?
Yes.
So there was a PS4 exclusive gun called the Hawk Moon in Destiny, and it had 2 different perks. And the one perk was like, on this bullet, it's going to do double damage. And then on another random bullet in the magazine, it also deals double damage. And they eventually nerfed it because this thing happened where the 2 perks would sometimes pick the same bullet, and you would just kill a dude in PvP in one shot. So I think that's what's happening there, is there's a random chance of the hyperspace being anywhere in this pack, and there's a 1 in 50 chance that the hyperspace lands on the rare slot. So that's my interpretation, or I'm sorry, a 1 in 50 that the hyperspace and the foil also land on a rare. You know what I mean? So so it's like there's multiple modifiers at work.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll get lucky, and the stars will align, and you'll get a foil hyperspace rare legendary.
But I get what you're saying, right? If a common can upgrade itself to a legendary because it was a hyperspace card, then you could get 5 legendaries in a box, which would be cool. And it says approximately 1 in every 8 packs. So you could get more than 4 in a box, or you could get more than 3. It's 3 in a box. Gross. You could get more than 3 in a box, or you could get less than 3 in a box. It's random is fun.
All right.
Yep. All right.
I don't have anything else to say about this.
All right.
Put this screen away. I don't want to see it anymore.
Yeah. I feel like we've gone
browser
round and
tabs.
round on this topic a number of times now.
All right. So we will move on to what's actually going to be sold when the game launches sometime in early 2024. We've had a couple little things here that makes us believe it's going to be March, right? The Spiel, the event that's in Europe somewhere, I think. Their event thing said the game comes out in March. There was an artist who had a post on Twitter that said the game's coming out in March. So who knows if that's accurate? Who knows if they were told, hey, it's going to be Q1? The only thing we know so far is officially is the first half of 2024. So the products that are going to be sold, the first one is a pre-release kit. So the pre-release kit will be $30 US MSRP. So this will come out a week before this. A week before the set fully launches. Each person that wants to register to play in the pre-release will have to order one of these kits through their shop owner. Each kit comes with 6 booster packs, 2 promo cards, which are new variants of Luke and Vader leaders, the quick start rules, damage counters, a little deck building guide, and a deck box. So that is and I will share a screen of that, what that product looks like for all our people listening on iTunes, so they can get some good audio. So there's the pre-release kit.
Immediate action for everybody. You said that you have to order this through your store. If your store is not following this game like you are by listening to this podcast, take a screenshot of this, Photoshop me out, and then show it to your store owner and tell them, buy a bunch of these. Because most of the people that are going to play this game aren't listening about it right now. They're going to hear about it the week beforehand. And if your store owner is relying on 50 people to individually order this through them, they're never going to have enough. But if you say hey, I think this game is going to be really big, you should buy 40 of these and start advertising it, then they know to buy a bunch of them. Most store owners are logical enough to not to buy a few extra. But if you have a store owner that is not logical enough and they are just going to order, the 4 orders that came in, then do not let them do that. Buy more and more people will come. If you have the product, they will come.
Well, and you can start building that list now.
Yeah.
Hey, do you think you might want to play this? Let me get your name so I can let our store owner know that you are also interested in this pre-release event.
Ideally, your store does that. Community. But is this a cardboard fold-out deck box, or is this a plastic? I mean, I'm sure it's not Ultra Pro, but those cheapo Ultra Pro ones that I love.
It doesn't.
I would assume it's cardboard.
I would assume it's cardboard, but it doesn't say. It just says
I like
deck
to squint
box.
at the picture and decide, but I don't know.
It does look different in design than the paper ones that come in the 2-player starter. But
so it's worth pointing out that the deck box, the tokens are all more or less free. If you think about the 6 packs, you're paying $30 for 6 packs. That's your money's paid for right there at $5 a pack. So it's hard to complain about.
Yeah.
Hey, some products a little bit early that we're going to get to play with, and it's like you're getting what you pay for plus, which is pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, and I know some games where their pre-release box like this becomes almost if you've played Pokemon, they have those Elite Trainer boxes that are card storage boxes. This almost looks like it's the right shape for that, which would be really cool to be a card storage box long term. But I don't know if it is or not. When we rip one open, we'll find out.
Yeah, I think this is a cool thing. So, yeah, I dig this.
And it's never too early, like Mr. Ben said. Our store has this printed off. It's in their little glass case so that people can see this game's coming, and it says 2024 ? Because they are not confident in 2024, but I am. And so they printed it off right away and put it in the little screen so people can start chatting about it in the store. It's never too early.
All right, we will move on to the 2-player starter set. So the 2-player starter set has 2 50-card decks. Luke and Vader, we already know. It comes with damage counters, quick start rules again. It has 2 paper foldable playmats, 2 folded paper deck boxes. There is, in here they say there's 10 cards, full play sets of 10 cards that are only found in the 2-player starter. So it's more confirmation on starter exclusive cards, but they do say that you get the full playset, so you don't have to buy multiple boxes of these. And that MSRP is at $34.99 US. So, thoughts, Mr. Ben?
It's a little steeper than I was hoping. I was thinking like $25 to $30 range for a 2-player starter. It's kind of what I was hoping, but I guess it's the Disney / Star Wars tax. $35 is not crazy unreasonable when you compare it to the price at $5 a pack. You're getting more cards and you're getting mechanically unique cards in full play sets. So I suppose it's a pill I'm willing to swallow. It's fine. It's fine.
Dan?
I'm less impressed. I'll be Mr. Negative again, but I mean the price point is fine, right? You are getting unique cards. I think there's good and bad things about having unique cards in starter decks. This is something Bandai does poorly. So, right, all their starter decks have a couple unique cards that you can't get from the booster packs, which can be good because then you're not getting junk in the booster packs that you already got in the starter deck. But it's also bad because if they underprint the starter deck or if your store doesn't stock it anymore after a while, but they still have set one booster packs, those cards become really expensive. So like the starter one for Digimon had a Greymon in it that was like meta defining for a long time. And like a starter deck for Digimon retailed at $9.99. It came with a booster pack and a full playable deck, which is really cool. And 4 copies of a couple, I think it was 2 different unique cards that you couldn't get in the booster packs. That Greymon like sold as a single card for like $50, but the starter deck MSRP'd at $9.99. So if they don't continue to print the starter deck into the ground, those unique cards can be really off-putting to new players if they're meta-defining. Now, if they're just vanillas that like match on curve, that's totally fine. They'll be good for the first set, and then they'll roll out of the meta. But we don't know. The price point, I think, is not great. Right? It's fine if you're going to be long-term invested in the game, if you've already decided you want to play it. But it's not fine if little Johnny's grandma is going to Target to buy him a Christmas gift, and she says, oh, look, I can get him this Pokemon deck for $9.99, or I can spend $40 on this Star Wars thing. This I'm going to buy him a Star Wars. No, she's not, right? She's going to buy the cheap $9.99 deck that still lets her kid play with cards that he had on his Christmas list or whatever. So I think when you raise that like entry point price, it can be really bad for community building and getting people to buy into the game in the first place, which I think is a big bummer, right? Like it's cool that it's a 2-player starter set. It helps you build community, but now you need a friend to play it with, or if you're only interested in light side or dark side, all of a sudden you have to like find someone to split the purchase with. It is costing twice as much as something normally would for you to be able to like just show up for a weekly event and buy a starter deck and play in a local tournament. I think starter decks really should have been split into 2 products. I know having extra UPCs and things like that is always problematic for stores, but especially for the first set to get people to buy in, lumping everything into a 2-player starter seems like it could be harder to get people to buy in because of it. The price point, I think, is the Disney tax, right? A Lorcana deck is like, well, to buy one is like ridiculous numbers because of bad decisions on how much they printed. But I think at MSRPs for like $15.99, so that's like $32 for 2 decks. So it's about the same, right? It's $3 off or something. But if we're comparing to other TCGs that are out there, One Piece decks MSRP for $9.99, Digimon MSRPs for $9.99, Flesh and Blood Blitz decks are $9.99. So they've got this price point that people are willing to buy in at. So to go to at least 50% more than that is asking a lot. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure they did their market research. I am not a business person, and there's a reason that I am not a business person. So I could be way off.
So this is actually spot on with Lorcana. MSRP for a starter deck is $16.99.
Ah, perfect.
So that puts it pretty much dead even with the Disney tax on Lorcana.
Yeah. I know in the stream, when I watched the stream, I got a little discouraged because they talked about the price and then they were like, yeah, and it comes with a rule book. That rule book's going to be likely out of date before this hits shelves, right? Like, let's be honest. That's how rule books work for card games. In the modern day of the internet, there isn't very much reason to give people a printed rule book other than like a learn to play sheet. The deck boxes are probably going to be mostly throwaway cardboard. Likely same with the damaged ships, but you need to include them so people can play the game. And the paper playmats are not something to brag about. That's something that like many card games have gotten rid of because it turns out that that's just a lot of recyclable waste that could have not been printed. So not selling me on the extra cost compared to like other non-Disney TCGs for paper playmats. That doesn't excite me. Anyway, that's my negativity. I'll be more positive next time, I promise.
So I'm not going to make this any better.
Good.
This really disappointed me. I'm not going to lie. The $34.99 price point, considering the thing I've been comparing this game to that also has 50 card decks and 3 of playsets, is the Final Fantasy TCG. That's had 2-player starter decks since the game came out. And the most recent one, they upped the price from $24.99 to $25.99. So currently, you can get a 2-player starter deck for the newest Final Fantasy release at $25.99, and that I feel like should have been their like copy paste, right? So the $34.99 I was really disappointed by it because I don't know, for some reason this arbitrary $30 number is in my head that when you get above that, that's really prohibitive for someone to jump in to test the game out, right? For some reason, that's the number. $10 for one deck, $25 for 2 decks. I like the idea of a 2-player starter, so I can play with my kid or my wife at home. I only have to buy one thing. But at the same time, if you were going to have a $35 price point, maybe you should have just split them in half and had 2 $15 decks.
And
So
did
this-
the Final Fantasy TCG always have 2-player starters? Because for a while, like Opus 5 and 4, when I was playing that, it was 1-player decks, and they were based off like one game, if I remember
So
right. But I could be crazy.
They alternate it. So usually, they
okay.
do 3 sets a year, and I think 1 set a year gets a 2-player starter. And then the other ones get like normal starters or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but 1 set a year, they have a 2-player starter for one of their releases, right? So 3 sets a year, okay?
Yep.
50 card decks, 3 of play sets. Like I felt like that's there. You like copy paste, right?
On
Yeah.
Mr.
I think the
Brightside note,
25
go for it.
the $25 price point, I think, is what we all wanted to see. And on some level, I try to keep reminding myself that like things are more expensive now than they were a few years ago. Plus, there's the Disney tax, but it 35, or once you add in sales tax, we're talking $40. Like you get like a full on board game for that kind of money. So, like I get it. Things are more costly. It's disappointing, but I mean, this is the reality of playing this kind of hobby in this day and age, I suppose.
The box art's really pretty, right? Like if I saw that in a store, I would go look at it. I mean, they nailed it. They did good there. And I mean, I'm just Mr. Negative. It's not the price point for this day and age. I mean, it's the price point for Lorcana and Star Wars Unlimited, but there's 20 TCGs out there and none of them are struggling, right? If I go to our store's website for yesterday night, it was One Piece, My Hero Academia, and Lorcana Night. And all 3 of those events had 20 to 30 people firing an event. And I guess Lorcana's at the same price point, but the other 2 are 40% lower. And I mean, again, I'm not a business person. I've never worked with Disney. I don't know what the Disney tax is, but my assumption is that it's not 40%.
Yeah. My Hero
we'll
Academia, right? Clash decks, they're not that expensive either.
Yeah, I think they're like $11.99 or something. And
Yeah.
they did a 2-player starter for their first thing, and it was like $18.99 for a 2-player starter, and it came with the equivalent of like a legendary card from this game. Like it came with 2 random of the highest rarities from the first set as like a preview card, which was like super cool because it like boosted your collection real early.
I just got 2 Clash decks to learn with the kid.
Yeah.
Not a fan of that system, but
Fair.
the kid wants
Me
to try
either.
it. And it's, I like the property. So,
Kudos on the full playsets thing. Some games don't do that. So, like, I'm worried about what games they're benchmarking, but they're doing some decisions right. So I don't want to dwell on the negative. Box art's awesome, but also full playsets. Like, some games still don't. And here's another boo on Bandai, right? If I go and buy the latest One Piece deck, all the cards in One Piece decks are unique to the starters, and each deck has one card at least that has only half a playset in. So you got to buy 2 of the starter to get all the cards. So blame. Don't do that.
Yeah.
They did some good decision making too.
That's the thing.
Now they won't hate us.
The thing about Bandai is they make mechanically really cool games, right?
Mm-hmm.
The terrible thing about Bandai is their business decisions. So, like, that not having full play sets, that drove me crazy in Dragon Ball Super. And the mechanically unique cards locked behind event pricing, right? So if I'm a dude that doesn't have a local store that I can get to go to weekly events, there's cards I'm not getting or I have to pay stupid money for because those cards are always really good, right? So then the secondary market for those cards is insane. And it felt so bad at some points, like trying to collect these cards to make competitive Dragon Ball Super decks when I was playing that, because I didn't really have a local scene.
Yeah.
Like having mechanically
unique promos.
Yeah, they did that for all the time.
Yeah, they still do that for Digimon and One Piece, but luckily they make the cards. I don't know if this is on purpose, but I'm going to claim that it is. They make those cards purposefully bad. So, like, none of them are meta defining right now, but they could easily slip up and have that happen.
There was a few in Dragon Ball Super that were like core cards for certain, combos and archetypes that it was very frustrating. But we'll move on. Next up, we have the booster boxes themselves. So a booster pack is $4.99 MSRP. So 24, like, you're looking at $120 MSRP for a box of Star Wars Unlimited. We already talked about the packs themselves. So $5 a pack. I think that's kind of what most people expected in 2023 for a new TCG booster pack to cost. So I don't really have anything positive or negative to say. It's kind of what I expected.
I'm actually pretty positive. I think that after I saw the deck price, I definitely thought the boosters were going to be $5.99 or even terribly $6.99. So I'm pretty happy that the boosters are at $5. They look sharp. They look cool. Their graphic design team's doing great.
Lorcana was at $5.99, so that was my expectation. So they beat my expectation. Although, I'll be honest, there's a part of me that's still in like 1996 paying, $275 for a pack of Magic cards. So double that for cards these days. The get off my lawn old man in me balks at it a little bit. But again, this is just the day and age. This is how much things cost now. I get it.
And remember, these are all MSRPs. Like, we're in now that Lorcana, like, ruined the world, for lack of better words, on pricing, like, who knows what stores are going to do when this game comes out and what they're going to assume for printing. So hopefully most stores charge MSRP, but definitely try to find a store that does, because that's what you should pay. That's what
FFG that's up
recommends.
to FFG.
Yeah.
It's completely up to FFG, because if they don't print enough to meet demand, then the suggested retail price is not the real price. And that's what happened with Lorcana. And I don't know, people get really mad at like stores that charge more, but that's stupid. If you want to be mad about the price of the product, that's a Ravensburger problem. And if there ends up being stores that have to buy their packs and boxes on the secondary market just to have it in their store, and then they charge whatever that plus their markup, like, that's just the nature of trading card games. So I get that it can be, again, I look at these as game pieces, and I also get really cranky when I can't get my game pieces that I want. But we just went through a really dark time with our local game store. So if this game turns into another opportunity for my local store to make a little money, try to maybe make themselves whole after the really dark couple of years we just went through, that's fine. I get it.
You'll figure it out.
All right, and we'll move on to the next thing, which is the launch kit. So the launch kit is something your store will buy. This is to complement or supplement the pre-release kits. So these have a base of each color that will be given to the players so that they can play, whatever aspects they want when they do the sealed pre-release. It also comes with booster packs that the store can use as additional pricing. Any thoughts?
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy. They're telling stores about it way in advance, which is way better than what we had for the Marvel Champions booster pack tragedy. So, I mean, this is looking good.
Alrighty. Next one up is the weekly play kit. So this is one of the 3 casual tier legs. So the weekly play kit can support 8 players for 8 weeks. It comes with 3 card mini boosters that are promos exclusive to weekly play kits. So these will have alternate art and hyperspace variants of cards. I think they said that a lot of these you'll be able to find the starter exclusive cards since those aren't found in boosters and those can't get hyperspace. The weekly play kits is a spot where they can add those into the rotation of the cards that get the alt art treatments. So weekly play kit, that's how you can get some more promos. So I think you get a promo pack each week you participate. So you can get 8 cards, right? Does that make sense?
They're cool. I think that's a good way to do it. I'm a little befuddled that we had to have a 2-player starter because people are worried about having too many products on the shelves, and now there's 7 different OP kits to start the game. But we'll see how it goes. Those won't be on the shelf. They'll be under the counter behind the shelf. That won't cause chaos at all.
Yeah.
I guess it's worth just making it explicit that the cards in these packs are not mechanically unique. They're all art treatments of cards that can be gotten elsewhere.
Correct.
So to me, this is just stuff that I'm going to trade for the rare cards I couldn't pull in my case.
The last product that they reviewed is a store showdown kit. So this is kind of the highest level of the casual OP side of things. So it's this box supports a 32 player store showdown event. Alternate art promos, just everybody gets a card just for showing up. And then there's different ones for placing. It comes with booster packs as well to use as additional prizing. So there you go. And all these kits are going to be available for your stores to order the same time. They can order their boxes and 2-player starters. So,
and they didn't mention if a store was limited on how many they could buy or anything. So I'll be curious to see that. Do they expect each store to have one store showdown? Or if our store really likes this game, can they do a store showdown once a month and then do 3 weeks of casual play? I'll be curious to see what the OP system could support. Because I think people will really want to participate in these. It'll be fun.
Yeah, so my understanding of this, if you're familiar with the store championship style event, that this is a more casual version of a store championship. And this, right, this is kind of what an OP tournament would look like, but I'm not ready to be competitive yet. That's my idea of how the store showdown would work. So it's casual, it's fun,
the noobs. Got
but
it.
Crush noobs and take souls. That's the plan. You're not allowed to have fun. You can only play the best deck. Because having fun is for losers. You need to play the best deck and the best deck only.
Oh.
If you're not first, you're last. So.
Hey man, winning is fun.
Yeah, winning's fun. Especially when you play terrible, soul-sucking decks. But yeah. So that was it for the products. You guys have anything else on the store showdown?
I'm excited for more details other than a black box that we don't know what's inside it. I mean, we know there's promos inside it, but get us excited. I mean, I am excited, but get us more excited.
I'm surprised we didn't see a playmat rolled out there, right? Because FFG loves to give out playmats for crap.
Didn't they show a playmat that's going to be at Spiel? or something like that.
So
I could have swore they showed a playmat.
They showed an spiel. There was an image, and in the box, there was a box in the background that showed the 2-player playmat that was at Gen
the
Con.
one they had at Gen Con.
And then they did have the Vader on Hoth art on a playmat laid out. So yeah, those are all Gamegenic products. But yeah. So that was it.
There's lots of news. That's cool.
Yeah. So I want to know what. Okay, so we have some listener questions, but while I'm digging those up, real quick, I would like to know your guys' thoughts on, now that we've kind of seen what the casual OP price support is going to look like. What are you hoping to see, and what do you expect to see from the competitive level OP?
Kind of the same thing, but like cooler. Just like promo cards, but either cooler mechanics or cooler art, specific deck boxes or playmats. Like kind of the same idea, just it's a little bit more exclusive because it's a little bit harder to get.
I could see them doing stamped stuff or like really cool initiative coins. The coolest thing for Star Wars LCG they did was for it was either the first Store Championships or the first Worlds. They had a metal balance of the Force coin, because in that game the Force could be on the light side or the dark side, and it had like a Sith symbol and a Jedi symbol, and it was a giant, like really tactile, big metal coin. It's in my office somewhere. I'll go find it later. But you would flip that on the table, and everybody would hear it, and it was amazing. So like things that like I want something I can hold in my hand and feel. But yeah, I'm expecting like stamped cards, more alt art treatments, things like that. Maybe we'll get the spot gloss foils again for like leaders or spot gloss cards. But now that they're double sided, that might be a lot harder. We had those for Versus for a while, right? They had the spot gloss or like plexiglass leaders or something.
Yes. Yeah, like some kind of polyurethane or whatever. Yeah. What are you making me look at, man?
So that is Ezra Bridger art from Star Wars Destiny on the card. Ezra Bridger, resourceful cut purse.
So apparently the people who select card art for Star Wars games all hate Ezra Bridger, because that's also bad.
I think Ezra's just a really hard character to draw, because even in the LCG they had different arts than Destiny, and they had different art when he appeared or like was on like a command card in Imperial Assault, and they've all been really bad. So this is probably the best one we've had, is the one that's here.
Yeah,
it just feels a little out of place
for sure.
Yeah. All right. I just, listener questions. Okay. So first up, we have Just Jack of the Golden Dice podcast. Also, they record the same nights we do.
Jerks.
Yeah. And he always waits till I say, hey, we're recording, and I drop your questions. And then 5 minutes later, hey, Golden Dice is recording, and I drop your questions. So that's fun.
See how it is.
Yeah. His question is, with Kanan and Sabine units revealed, what are you hoping or expecting for other members of the Rebels crew? So Dan, we'll kick it to you.
I want Chopper. That's all I want. Chopper is my daughter's second favorite. She really likes Hera, but she would be enamored with a Chopper card. And I hope that it's a leader, and I want it to be a meme leader that like is just ridiculously over the top doing Chopper shenanigans, because that would make me super happy. I don't know what it would be, but something super unique that makes you say like beeps and whirs out loud or something. I'd be a big fan. That's more of a Versus card, but I would take it. And Hera, something with ships, right? Makes sense. What are you thinking?
I may have already since we've already seen a Kanan. I don't know that we're going to get multiple Kanans, but the Rebel card that I would really want to see is a depiction of Kanan towards the, I guess, spoilers for Rebels, but towards the end of that show when he lost his eyes, I would love to see some kind of version of him as the blind monk with like some kind of manipulation ability that messes with the opponent, like exhausting a resource or taking cards off the top of their deck and throwing them to the bottom. You don't get a look at him because he's blind, but manipulating, like that's what I would like to see, is the blind Jedi Kanan.
Kanan is my favorite Star Wars character at the moment. I want to see a card called Karabast that has a bonus effect when Zeb is in play. Right? Because like we've seen these cards where anybody can use them, and if you have the force trait, you get a bonus, right? So Karabast does a thing, and then gets a bonus effect for Zeb. That's what I want to see.
That'd be cool.
And I want the Bendu, right? Whether that's a battlefield or a base, I guess, or like a leader. Like maybe it's a card that both players can use, like something weird, because he's the one in the middle, right? He doesn't really pick sides. So something unique with the Bendu I would like to see. I know he's not really a Rebels crew member, but
it's a fair answer.
I'm throwing it in there.
He just heals both bases each turn. I'd love it.
There you go. Shadow of the Bat would like to know, who do we think will win post Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker? Not grumpy old man Luke, but Mandalorian Season 2 hallway scene Luke, or Ahsoka from Ahsoka. So you get current Ahsoka or Luke killing Dark Troopers. Who wins?
It depends on who's writing the show.
Filoni's writing it.
If Filoni's writing the show, it's Ahsoka, hands down. It's just, that's what it is.
You know what's funny is these are both characters who started off as like whiny little brats that became hardcore. So like throw in Ezra, and then you've got like the whole trifecta of like the annoying Star Wars characters who eventually became tough. I think I have to go with Ahsoka just because I don't really like Luke. So by default, I guess I'm Team Snips.
I think Ahsoka would win, and I think it's mainly because, like, so she was Anakin's apprentice, right? So she was trained by Anakin, right? She got to fight with Obi-Wan. She fought through the Clone Wars, right? Like, and then she still had all of Anakin's recording if you've been watching Ahsoka. So it's like she's still been following that combat training, right? So, and Luke, like, who's his combat training with? Like, we know at some point there's a new Jedi Order and it fails, and Leia becomes almost a Jedi, but she's pregnant, right? So, like, who's Luke been training with, right? Like, I don't know. I feel like Ahsoka's level of training is probably like up here, and Luke's is like down here. I think if you're going on like current canon, like, I don't know, maybe there's something in the comics I'm missing, but I don't know.
I wondered if part of that is just like the level of CGI that could exist when those trilogies came out, right? If you compare like the lightsaber battles from the prequels when they actually had CGI and Yoda's like jumping all over the panel, like slicing people in half, they couldn't have done that when they were doing the original Star Wars. They wouldn't have known how. So instead, it's these really stagnant battles where people are barely able to move, right? Even like Return of the Jedi Darth Vader compared to old Anakin looks vastly different. So I think they showed that at the end of Mandalorian Season 2 that Luke is a force to be reckoned with, which I'm with Ben. Like, I've never been a big Luke fan because I feel like he just whines a lot and then gets his way. It's the space Aladdin of that's what I always call Ezra, is space Aladdin, right? He just whines a lot and steals things. So that's just what Star Wars is, right? There's a whiny kid that gets their way, and yeah, I think it'd be a pretty even match. That's my guess.
All right, next up from Inception of the Garbage Rollers. With the cards revealed so far, are you worried aggro will dominate set 1? Here's a couple questions. That's the first one. So, Ben, with the cards revealed so far, are you worried that aggro is going to dominate set 1?
I feel like for every TCG that has ever come out or is ever going to come out, that it's a valid concern that aggro is going to be overtuned in set 1. Like, that's a super common problem because a lot of times what control needs is a lot of options. They need a lot of tools. So you take the best small units and in like card game after card game, just playing aggro and turning right, particularly in the limited card pool that is a set 1. That is a tried and true strategy. Not only is that a tried and true strategy for each new TCG, that tends to be the tried and true strategy for like climbing the ladder early after a new Hearthstone expansion released. Like aggro, the decision trees in aggro are just a little bit easier to figure out, and it's a little bit less reliant on having a big flexible toolkit compared to especially control, but even mid-range. So yeah, I mean, let me rephrase it. I don't know if I'm worried, but I would fully predict that when the game first drops, even just look at Dan's story from Gen Con with the starter decks, how like initially the Darth Vader aggressive deck was winning more games, but once you kind of figured out Luke, he was able to come back. Yes, I predict that aggro is going to be very strong certainly within the first few months, but within this first set of the game.
I have, as a tried and true to aggro player, I can tell you that the skill ceiling you need to be a good aggro player is a lot lower than other decks. And I say that as a person that plays aggro in every game I've ever played, right? My level of decision making that I have to make is light years below the other players, like in our local Lorcana group. And I'm off aggro there now, so maybe I'm gonna toot my own horn because I finally am not playing aggro in a game. But I think in almost every modern TCG I've played, when the game first comes out, aggro just dominates the local scenes. It even dominates a couple big tournaments because the thing that control needs is experience playing. Like they need those choices to make. And then once they have the choices, they need to make the right choice, which is even harder than just having the choices in your hand. And that takes like repetitions, takes experience, it takes like a lot of practice at the game. And then even beyond that, I think that a lot of times mid-range decks have even like a harder time with how to make the right choice because they need to be able to pivot between aggro and between control and make the right decision based on the matchup. Whereas an aggro player is just always going face and a control player is just always going control until their win condition is there. And having played Lorcana in these first 2 to 3 months, whatever it's been a whirlwind. The exact same thing happened, right? People started playing these aggro decks that would just win turn 3, and people were like, oh my gosh, this game is horrible. And then some super oppressive control deck came out, and people were like, oh, this is the deck. Nothing can beat it. And then all of a sudden, a mid-range deck started beating that control deck, and now they actually have a pretty nice triangle. Now everybody's in a different corner of that triangle, and they like to say their corner is best. But when you look at the win rates, they're all like 49.9% to 50.1%, right? So there's a real like skill challenge between these three decks. You have to know your matchup and what to do correctly. But I think that aggro like has probably the easiest choices to make. Slap things down, go face. Control has probably the second easiest things to make, right? Make the right decisions with my control, but always focusing on control. And then there'll be some kind of mid-range style that flips between the two that probably will be the hardest to master and the last to pop up in the meta. But I expect all three to be viable decks in the first set. I'm big anti-BDIF, in case you couldn't tell.
To answer Inception's question, I'm not too worried that aggro will dominate set 1, but I agree with the things you guys have said. I think aggro will come out of the gate hard, fast, early. And then just like you said, once control and mid-range start to figure their game out towards the end of the set 1, I think it'll balance itself out. His second question is, what is your favorite card art so far? So Dan, we'll start with you this time. What's your favorite card art so far?
I think it's Death Trooper. I really like the card art on Death Trooper. It would almost be Takedown, the new removal card. I really like that card art as well. But those are my top two. Not Ezra is the answer. Not Chewbacca.
Ben, favorite card art?
Definitely Chewbacca.
Well, which
It's just
Chewbacca?
too crazy,
It depends.
man. The face Chewbacca. It's too funny.
I noticed they put the other Chewbacca on the booster pack art, obviously for a reason. So, yeah.
I mean, if I'm picking the art that I think is like sincerely the coolest, then it's probably the Imperial Interceptor. Like, I think they really captured that shit. But if it's the art that like I laugh and like have enjoyed the most, I've loved that Chewbacca art because it's so wild. What about you, Josh?
My favorite is the ground unit 3-cost Boba Fett. That's fine.
That's a good answer.
That's a good one. That's a classic.
Last question from Inception. Now that we know pricing and rarity, how do you plan on buying into Star Wars Unlimited? So, a box and drafts, a case. You gonna play any limited trading singles?
Well, let me preface this with, I am not giving advice. I do not think that card games are investment vehicles. I think if you are in a financial place where you can't look at this money as literally being flushed down the toilet, then you shouldn't be spending it on cards. Like, you have other priorities that you need to spend your money on. So, like, just get that out of the way up front. Like, you're spending this money in the same way that, like, you're going to the movies. Like, you're buying an entertainment product for the experience. And to that end, my intent, assuming allocations don't come for us all, I've already talked to my guy at the store. My intent is to start with a case and then play draft and sealed as frequently as my store has it / my wife allows it.
Dan?
I don't know if I want to answer this on recording.
Yeah,
Well, people might watch it
fair.
later and have opinions about me. I think I'm not going in on a full case yet. I'm probably going to get 2 boxes from our local store. It depends on allocation, right? If there's plenty of product, but like our store didn't even allow us to buy cases for Lorcana and other things because they wanted to make sure everybody got product. And I'm expecting this pessimistically to be similar, where stores might need to spread purchases out so you can actually have a community. And I would definitely support that. So at least with what I'll plan to do, unless there's like a plethora of product, would be to get 2 boxes and then just play drafts for a while, and then buy singles for whatever color that I really, really want to play. Because I typically find like a color and then I just lock in on it. And I don't know what the color is going to be yet, but right now red is calling to me as my hunter, my face hunter brain is telling me that I should play red. What about you, Josh?
So
7 cases,
2-player starter. So also, right, all the game-genic stuff, right? I have to think about too, right? So, am I getting sleeves? Am I getting playmats? Are we getting deck boxes? What are we doing here? You can mix and match the deck boxes so that your aspect colors all match your deck box. So, it's like there's some decisions to make here on accessories. So that has to go into this also. But probably looking at like 3 boxes, and then I'll probably trade or sell and do singles from there. My showdown will be up for grabs. I as a bidder can take my showcase when I pull it. That'll get me 3 more boxes or whatever, you know. So probably 2 to 3 boxes, the 2-player starter, and some accessories to start. That's probably the plan right now. Not going to commit to a case just yet. Shadow of the Bat also had another one on the build phase server. What would you like to see a Thrawn card do? So Ben, what do you want Thrawn to do in Star Wars Unlimited?
So I get that, like, the popular depiction of Thrawn is in his Grand Admiral status, and I'm assuming we're probably going to see him in that form in the Command faction. And I would like to see him have some sort of way of showing off his ruthlessness. So killing a friendly unit to get some kind of a benefit, or to, I don't know, kill a ground unit to spawn a space unit, or some sort of like exchanging of these expendable troops for some other sort of benefit, I think would sort of capture the flavor of that era of Thrawn. Now, having read his comic books, I would love to see like a unit version of Thrawn that's like way back when he first encountered the Empire, and he's like the long-haired, shirtless, like world beater. But I think that's probably unlikely we're going to see that, particularly in set 1.
Dan?
I want to see a cunning Thrawn, a yellow Thrawn, and I'd like him to show off his tactical genius side, where he has some sort of ability that lets you exchange a hand in your resource row, a card in your hand with a card in your resource row. So you can resource something and like save it for later and like be playing the long game, right? Not the long con, but like the long strategic game of I'm going to resource this. And maybe it's maybe it's part of like an epic action when he flips, you can swap something. So people will not know what you swapped, but you'll have saved just the right card. That could be pretty cool. Something tactical geniusy.
Yeah, I think I lean more towards like the strategic tactical guy. In Destiny, he always did something with your opponent's deck, right? So like the one version, you would call it, say, a number, and like I think it was like you could pull a card from your opponent's hand, and if it matched, I think you could activate him. You choose a number, and then you look at your opponent's hand, and you can discard a card from their hand that matched the cost you said. I think that was the first version of Thrawn, and then the other version of Thrawn, the newer one, was pretty wild. You could look at the top 4 cards of the deck, and then he had like an epic action where you could play one of those cards as if it was yours, and like you could spot your opponent's characters and stuff for traits to trigger like the benefits of the card. So I don't know. My guess is if they do Thrawn, it's going to be some sort of deckhand manipulation tactic, just based on how they designed him in Star Wars Destiny.
In Star Wars LCG, he could like exhaust a unit once per in an engagement that he was in or something like that. So it'd be like saying you could have an action on Thrawn that's just like exhaust one of your opponent's units at the start of a round or something crazy. It was messing with your opponent's like plan. They'd have a plan and then you'd be like, nope, you're going to not have that part of your plan. Can you still survive? It was pretty cool.
I think that was it for listener questions. You guys have anything before we wrap this one up?
It was good seeing everybody.
Yeah.
Even if some of the topic was a little bit heavy today.
You know, sometimes the Imperials win. That's usually that second movie. So we're going to get to our third movie soon and have our comeback moment when we find out more about this exciting OP plan. But until then, talk to your store, show them the screenshots from FFG's stream of the different products, because the sooner you tell them, the better it's going to be.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for this latest episode of the Space Arena Ground Arena podcast. Make sure you talk to your stores. Try to get a running list of people interested in doing the pre-release so they know how many to order. So you can have a banging pre-release at your store. Make sure you tip your servers and make good choices. And we will see you in the arenas.